When you get focused on one thing enough, it changes your perspective. It's actually been one of my greatest strengths to have this exuberant attention that wants to be divided in so many different directions. I am much better at creating when I focus on just one thing at a time. So we are in the middle of a snowstorm that they are calling Snowmageddon, and my husband's had a couple of snow days the past 2 weeks. We've had days where we've had to cancel plans. There have been big warnings against travel, and we live right on the lake, so once everything freezes, there's just wind coming right at our house. This window, obviously, we can normally see right out of, but I want to show you a little bit more of what it looks like. So, waking up this morning, I could barely open this door to let my dog outside, and so there is obviously some crazy heavy wind going on. And I remember being jealous of country kids growing up because they always got snow days. My husband and I actually both have plans today. He's supposed to be going to a conference tomorrow, and he's going to stay overnight closer to the venue tonight, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Today might be another snow day for us. I am going to get started on the usual breakfast and make myself a cup of coffee before anyone's up. I have done a tiny, negligible amount of editing today, but I plan to do some a little bit later. Okay, so it is now 8:30. I have been up since 5:50 this morning. That's when my baby woke up. I fed her, put her back down, only today she actually stayed down. So I have been doing some editing since about 6:40 in the morning with a little break to make coffee. But I have already done 2,000 words of editing, which is really good, and I hope to keep that up. I'm gonna keep working because my baby's not awake yet, and hopefully I will have maybe like another half hour. Okay, so today is the 3rd of February, and it's a Tuesday, so my mom is over hanging out with my baby. I've already done 1,075 words today, just during a nap time, but I'm aiming to get focused for the next hour and a half or so, and I really want to hit 4,000 words editing for today. Okay, so I am done writing for the day. It is now 5 o'clock. I have mostly edited, but I did have to rework a little bit of one scene just because I've changed a bit of the magic and one of the plot points here. But I ended up doing 3,157 words of editing, which ends up being 8 pages, and I'm very happy with that. Okay, so it is February 19th, and once again, I was up right around the 6 o'clock mark. Last night, I ended up taking some time to write by myself, and I did have a really good editing period from 7:50 until 10 p.m. I had a nice long chunk. I got a lot done. Today is hopefully going to be another big day. My mom-in-law is watching the baby, and we're just gonna keep on moving. Okay, it is February 19th still, and it is now about 6:30 p.m. I'm still just on the cusp of either getting or kicking this little sinus cold. It's not a full-blown cold yet. It's almost there, but it's also kind of not. So I'm going to just keep taking it easy for the rest of the night. such a treat. That's scalding hot. Okay, so it is exactly 9 a.m. now. My baby woke up at 6:45, so I got a really solid 45 minutes in. I would have loved to have a little bit more. So I did 1,250 words of editing, which is about half of what I would like to get done every single day, just to make sure that I'm staying on track. But I do have time for myself later today, and I also know that she's going to need to nap, so I'm gonna squeeze in some writing into those blocks. I have already cleaned a bathroom downstairs. I'm probably gonna clean the upstairs one. I'm gonna vacuum. On Mondays, I like to call it my Make It Clean Monday, where I just reset everything as best as I can. But it's gonna be a pretty typical day until noon, and then I'm going for a run with a friend, which I'm very excited for. I try to do at least one run every single week, and I'm going to just do some regular house things and also try and give the baby a nap and get a little bit of writing in as well. So it is March 2nd and I have a baby asleep on me. This is the reality of when so many of my writing sessions happen. She does not rest easily if I put her down in the crib, which is challenging, but it also kind of forces me to get really, really disciplined with how I write. So I was prepared. I've got my laptop right here. I'm sitting down today and we're gonna get some things done. Something I learned through producing my debut book, Seasons of Life, was that I am much better at creating when I focus on just one thing at a time. I just find that when you get focused on one thing enough, it changes your perspective and you have an easier time sitting down and just getting right into it without having to be into the flow, without having it to be the right time or place, and that has been really helpful. I would say one of the things that I'm most thankful to have done before I became a mom was in the year of 2024, not only did I finish all of my creative projects that I had open-ended so that I could come into motherhood with a completely clear plate, but I also continued to practice the art of focus and deliberation and setting goals and breaking them down into smaller chunks. When I was younger, I really wanted to get diagnosed with ADHD because I really struggled with setting goals and I couldn't keep everything tracked out in my head the way that other people seem to be able to, and I struggled with getting started. I struggled with being hyperfixated on something and not noticing everything else that needed to be done, and just trying to get myself to complete tasks was exhausting. But it's something that I find kind of funny now looking back on. I had to get really good at timing. I had to get really good at color coding things and finding ways that worked for me to focus. And when I tell people about these tools now, it's people who have ADHD that tend to really like the way that I've taught myself how to focus. It's actually been one of my greatest strengths as a creative person to have this exuberant attention that wants to be divided in so many different directions, because when I can train myself to just captivate my attention on the thing that it is I'm trying to work at, it's like a superpower getting things done. So anyways, I have a workshop that I'm doing today and I've got to get going for that, but wish me luck with another successful week of writing. We are going to continue squeezing this in the very early morning and late at night and in between every nap that we can. Good evening. It is March 2nd. Yesterday, when I had a couple hours to myself, I ended up not editing as much as I would like to, but still a very good chunk. I did about 3,200 words, which is a couple pages. I do need to be editing more just because I fell a little bit behind, and I want to leave myself enough time to write the last couple chapters of the book. When I decided to go back and edit and revise everything that I've already done, it was because the book stopped at 102,000 words, and I was about 3 or 4 chapters away from concluding the book. I think I have a little bit to go to wrap up the narrative. I know that it's gonna be a little bit funky to do, and I'm just praying that it's going to come smoothly once I've done these revisions. I have completed draft 2 of Project Starfall in possibly the most convoluted way possible. In November of 2022, I started working on draft 1. I didn't finish draft 1 until October of 2024, and I was working on and off for that whole time. There was probably a 6 to 8 month chunk of time that I didn't touch the book at all because I was so focused on Seasons of Life and getting that book published. Like I said, I finished it October of 2024, and I took a break because I had a baby in January of 2025. So naturally, I just needed some time to focus on some other things, but I picked up the book and started working on draft 2 in February of 2025. So I gave myself a solid 4 months away from this project and came back with completely fresh eyes. That said, I did not come back with a very clear plot plan, and I have learned so much through the process of writing these drafts, but I came back into it with just pure enthusiasm, and I knew where I had gone in draft 1 and I knew where I had ended, and through that I kind of saw, okay, the plot is right here and I have to dig it out through all these other things. And I worked from February of 2025 until July of 2025, which is when I shared a video called My Draft is Stuck, I'm Spiraling into Doubt. Basically what happened is I reached 40,000 words in draft 2, and I realized that there was something about the magic system that was off that I couldn't quite pinpoint, and I couldn't describe what I wanted it to be instead. So that said, the whole book halted. I had about 3 weeks where I was just really snagged in this one spot, and I got the feeling that I should just go back and rewrite the first 40,000 words. Not completely rewrite them, but heavily revise. Everyone tells you not to do that. If you look at writing advice, that's like one of the #1 things that people will say is don't go back and edit while you're writing. But I am the kind of person where it's not worth it to me to finish a draft that I know has started in the wrong place. And perhaps this is controversial writing advice, but I think that if you can really narrow down exactly what it is that you need to change about the root and the bones of your book, then the fruit that it grows is gonna be better. So it was worth it for me to go back and do that heavy revising work so that I could actually write the book that I wanted to, and in the end, waste less time. So after 3 weeks of getting stuck in July, I went back, revised the first 40,000 words, and then honestly from 40,000 to 102, I flew. Everything went super smooth. Everything went absolutely great. The plot started unfolding, so many things came together, and then I had this goal of finishing draft 2 by December 31st of 2025. I like to have big goals because then I aim really high, and even if I don't achieve them, you know, it's like the 4th grade classroom saying, shoot for the moon, and even if you fail, you'll land among the stars. That's what I do. So I did that, and I also just really felt God putting it on my heart. There was something about this turn of the year that was going to be a big change. So New Year struck, the ball drops, it's the next day, and my book is stuck again. I can't move past 102,000 words. So January of 2026, the beginning of this year, I took another 3-week break, and I just stepped away from my book. I let it gestate in my head. I gave it that creative winter time to sit and be fallow and just let myself muse it over. I prayed about it a lot, and I came back at the end of January with the decision that I once again needed to go back over the entire 102,000 words and revise. That is currently what I'm doing. It has been a very interesting process, turning draft 2 into draft 2.5, into draft 3, into draft 4 in a really funny way that no one will tell you to do, including me, because if you don't have to do it this way, it's honestly way easier if you just write it from start to finish. But this is what my book needed. And the things that I kept on getting snagged on, once I knew what it was that I needed to change and I went back and revised, rereading my work refreshed my perspective so much on the book itself. By the time I was 102,000 words in, I couldn't really see the big vision anymore, and I had started to feel like the book just didn't have that firepower behind it that I initially felt was there. And honestly, listening to that feeling, that whisper, that spirit call to go back and revise the whole thing completely refreshed my perspective of the book, and it gave me new eyes for this work that I'm building. So it's ended up being a very arduous task, but a very good thing. And I feel like I've learned so much about what this book wants to be and what God wants this book to be and what I want this book to be. And I'm just very excited about it again. And now that it is like the month that spring arrives, I am just so excited to be working on this and to be getting to a point where we are very close to actually having a finished manuscript that I can give to early readers. So I am just so thrilled. But anyways, it is time to get writing, and I will keep you updated with where I'm at as the days unfold. So this was a very fun weekend. I took a 3-day break from my book and hung out with my childhood best friend. We made vision boards, we went out for dinner, we had a bonfire, we did the thing where you sit across from each other and you paint portraits, and we did our best. It doesn't look fantastic, but it was good. And having the break from my book was actually very, very nice. The point that I'm at right now with Project Starfall is that all of the intensive moments from the book have climaxed. They've all reached this big energetic point, and we've gotten over that hill. Now we're at the spot where we are wrapping up everything else. We are making sure that the book concludes, but also leaves on a note where you know there's going to be a sequel, because I decided my first fantasy book that I write should be book 1, and I'm a bit nervous for that when it comes to the actual publication process, because I know that sometimes it's harder for publishers to want to take a risk on an author that doesn't yet have an established audience. So that's a little intimidating, but I'm just not thinking about that right now, because I'm trusting that if I tell the story exactly like it needs to be told, then the right people will find the book and the right publisher will want the book, and it'll be phenomenal in that way. And I can't control the things that are outside of my own influence, but I can control my skill level when it comes to the writing, and I can control how often I'm showing up for my craft and what it is that I'm learning to add to my skill set. So right now we are just working on the denouement of the story. We are bringing everything together. If I was writing just a standalone, I have full confidence that this ending would be easier to write, but because I'm not writing a standalone, there is something that I want to leave open, and I need to make sure that I don't box myself in when it comes to how I'm closing everything off. So I have a couple hours to write to myself. My mom is here today, and I'm just getting back into the flow of things. I've also had a cold for the past month. On and off I've been sick, which is really unusual for me, but I have turned a corner with that, and I am getting better. So anyways, I initially had this deadline as my husband's birthday, March 24th, that I wanted to have everything printed and done, and I had my revisions done by that, which was awesome. I had another 2 chapters written, but I've given myself the deadline of the 22nd of April, because that is the day before we go to Mexico, and I do not want to be writing this book in Mexico. And honestly, if I'm going past that, that's me being a perfectionist. So I need a self-imposed deadline to be able to have that end in sight, but also not to let myself get distracted and try to make everything too fluffy. But I'm still going to try my best that I can to write this really, really well, so that when I'm revising again after my early readers get this book, there's very little that I have to do. So wish me luck with that today. Okay, so it is the end of March. It has honestly been a crazy couple weeks, and I have not filmed as much as I would like to, but here's the quick rundown of what has been going on for the past several weeks. My baby was sick for about a week and a half. I was sick for 2 weeks. My husband got sick for a couple of days. He always gets like the least amount of sick out of all of us, and I'm actually really happy with how we recovered. It has been a great thaw over the past couple weeks, and now everything is green again, and we've had some really lovely days. We have had lots of walks outside, and I think our plan is, if it's nice out tomorrow, we're gonna go for a family hike, because tomorrow's my husband's birthday, and I have just been sprinting as fast as I can with this book. But that said, because everyone's been sick, my mom and my mom-in-law have also been sick, which means I had 2 babysitters cancel last week. So I was feeling pretty overwhelmed, and the week before that my husband was at a 2-day conference in Toronto, so I didn't get much done for probably about 2.5 weeks. And today my mom is here again, so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get as much focus time as I possibly can. Besides that, we have just been going through a couple different things with our housing situation, a couple different things with family and trying to see friends and trying to keep up with everything. which has proven to be a little bit busy and a little bit difficult, but overall we've just been praying and leaning on God as much as we can. My husband has a very big year coming up with work, so we've just been really having to hone in on our teamwork, which is absolutely great. We have amazing communication and we've always been a great team. Yeah, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but I am very excited to put together a rubric of what I want my early readers to be looking for when I do get my draft out to them, because this is the last draft that I'm writing before it gets to a handful of selected people who are going to read it and give me really critical, honest, good feedback and fresh eyes on my work. And then after that, I'm going to do one final revise and get it out to agents. I'm just really excited. We're in a really good spot with this book. What's ended up happening is exactly what I've told you, where it's not draft 2 that's done, it's a combination of draft 2, 3, and 4. So I'm actually 3 months ahead of schedule. I'm 3 months behind my schedule for finishing draft 2, but 3 months ahead of schedule for finishing draft 4, the final thing before it goes out to my early readers. So I just think it's very cool how God works in mysterious ways, and that keeps popping up. And I just keep coming back in this season of life to 1 Peter 4:10-11, which is each of you should use whatever gifts you have received as stewards of God's grace in various forms. And I'm just feeling that so much right now, which also goes along really well with Ephesians 4:1, which is I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling which you have received. And then Galatians 5:22-23, the fruits of the Spirit. I find all three of those right now in my life are just going together so incredibly well, because it's talking about your personal calling from God, the conviction that you have in your heart, your unique path, but also the fact that every single one of us is called to pick up our cross and follow after Jesus, bear whatever responsibility we can, and move forward with it in a way that serves the world and follows the biblical principles that are laid out for us, and produce those fruits of the Spirit. So I just really love that right now. It's just super fun, and I'm finding it incredibly fruitful to be leaning on the Lord, and I'm having so many great conversations, and it's astounding to me, because I didn't think I was gonna have time for all of these other things as I'm working on my draft. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm taking care of a house, I'm trying to do a lot at once, but it doesn't feel like a lot, and it doesn't even feel like I'm balancing things where one thing goes and all of a sudden everything follows. It just feels maintainable. It feels really good, the amount of workload that I have, and I like everything that I'm doing right now. And I'm in a season where motherhood feels very good, and where my marriage feels very good, and where my husband's a little bit more stressed, but I feel like I'm strong enough to be leaned on because of who I'm leaning on. So it's just a really good season of life right now, and I'm so excited for spring as well. It's snowing today, but it has been warmer out lately. It's progressively getting a little bit warmer, and I'm excited. With that said, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write for a solid 2.5 hours. Let's go. I got my coffee, I got my water, I got my big headphones back, which I had left at my mom's for a couple days, but she brought them back with her, which is just so good. And I've done a little tidy up of my space here. There were obviously lots of baby toys strewn around here, but it's just nice to have everything fresh. This was probably like a 10-second tidy. I like to have gates closed. I'm gonna close this one too. I've got a door down there that I like to close, and just closing all of the loops. You know, I don't work well with open doors. I like my space to be a closed circuit. Just got back from the grocery store not too long ago, and she is so tired, so I'm going to try to do just a little bit before she wakes up. Okay, so if you hear any crazy noises downstairs, it's my mom and my baby having a play date. Hello. Vlogs like this are always really fun, but naturally, when I'm filming anything that takes a number of weeks to do, there's always going to be gaps in between where I kind of lose track of what it is that we're talking about, and life just takes over. So I'm gonna run you up to speed on how I've been the past couple weeks. So I finished my revisions on the first 102,000 words of Project Starfall at the end of March, just before the month turned into April. And over the course of doing my revisions, my word count bumped up from 102 to 132. So I added 30,000 words in this revision. I fleshed out some things that just really needed a lot more depth. And I actually cut one chapter out because it just didn't make any sense. There was no point for it. It didn't develop the plot. And now it is April 7th. And I am closing Project Starfall today. It is happening today. This is the moment. This is the time it needs to get done. I have my outfit on for getting things done. I like to get dressed up whenever I'm trying to do things. It makes me feel a lot more productive than just wearing a basic yoga shirt and pants. So here we are, ready for stuff. Ready to write, ready to get this book done. So, as I suspected, because this always happens, I get to the end and everything slows down. I did not finish the book yesterday, but I did get to the very last scene. I have maybe 5 or 6 paragraphs left to do, 3 to 5 pages to write, and then the book is completely closed. But I just think it's very funny because I totally saw this coming. My mom got here a little bit later, so I sat down to write about half an hour later than I usually would, and then the scene that I was working on closing took a bit longer than I suspected. I jumped into the next one, it went really smoothly, but then my time just ran out. I went for a run last night with a friend that I wasn't planning on going for, but I ended up doing it because commitment and showing up is important. And so now here we are. I still have some time left until my actual deadline that once again I have self-imposed, so it's not a real deadline and I can be as flexible as I want, but at this point I am going crazy because the project is so close to being done and I just need to find the time to sit down. So here is my plan as it stands now. We leave for Mexico on the 23rd, but we're gonna be at my parents' house for the 21st, which means I need to have printed my book by the 20th. So April 20th is my actual deadline if I want to have a physical copy of this book by the time we go to Mexico and still have time to film and update you guys about that. These last couple chapters are pretty rough. I've just been pulling them together. I haven't planned them out so much. It's just been everything that's come together since the climax to form this denouement at the end of the story where everything is unraveling once again now that we know where the story has gone. So as this dust is settling, I am realizing that I have to go back in and tweak a little bit of the characters just to really make their voice, their tone, and everything with their body language and their presence just feel realistic to that character. How I usually work is I just get the dialogue out there as roughly as I can and get the story moving, and then when I go back to revise, I tweak everything and polish it like a stone. But the characters right now, I really have to rein them in because a lot of dialogue has happened and I want to make sure that every character sounds like themselves and none of them sound like me writing a story, because the worst thing you can do as an author is be seen through the book. I am just at the point where we are finishing the book. So yes, I did lie to you. The book was not done yesterday and it will not be done today. And it might not be done this week, but it is so incredibly close. And I've said that so many times in these updates, but we are almost there. Finished Project Starfall on Thursday, April the 9th, 2026. So when I had left you on the day that I said I was gonna finish the book, I did not finish the book, like I said. I had maybe 4 paragraphs left that I had to do. I was on the closing scene of the book. I was so incredibly close. I was at the point where I had gone for a drive with my baby and I thought, okay, when I'm driving home, she'll fall asleep and then I'll park in the driveway and I will steal my own Wi-Fi. And as soon as I pulled in the driveway, her eyes were like, and she was awake. She was not napping. So I thought, okay, I'll get back in the car and we'll drive 20 minutes to the library because then she'll fall asleep and I could finish the book in the parking lot and then I could probably print it that day. And I get to the parking lot, she is fast asleep in the back seat, and I have maybe half an hour of writing to do, and I close it. And I'm like, you know what? Cool, it's done. And that's honestly what I needed. Because I have a habit of slowing down for the last quarter of any project that I'm working on, I think that it makes perfect sense that I finished my book in the parking lot of the library, because had I been sitting down in this perfect environment with someone watching my baby and I'm just fully focused on my book, I think I would have overthought it. But because there was that added pressure of having to finish it at the time that she was napping in the car, I just got it done and I'm really happy with how it ended. We're both wearing pink today, it's pretty cute. Look, this is my book. That's my book. Oh no, you can't have it. So that is it. We are done writing Project Starfall. We are done drafting. What we have to go from here is just revisions when I get some beta reader feedback. We capped out the project at 143,711 words, which ends up being 405 pages on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So when this book is printed in the format of 6 by 9, which is usually what a fantasy book is printed at, it'll probably be closer to 520 pages. That is insane. I am very excited for that. What I think is the craziest about this is this draft of Project Starfall, plot-wise, covers half of what my first draft did. Because the first draft was so incredibly messy and I didn't really know what I wanted to go deep on, so I just went as fast through the story as I could. But this is so much richer. And draft 1, with double the plot, ended up at 165,000 words. So I'm 20,000 words shy, but half the plot and 4 times the amount of detail. This is so good. I am incredibly happy with how this project finished. Draft 1 was an absolute dumpster fire of vomit, barf, awfulness, yuck, never look at it ever. But this draft is great. I am really happy that people are going to see this. If anyone got close to looking at my draft 1, I would hide and be ashamed, because that was literally just me trying to get the story out of my brain and onto the page. This is the actual story. This is actually a good plot. These are good characters. I am really proud of what we've got going here. When it comes to the next books in the series, I've kind of already set myself up for what I need to cover, and I'm really excited to get into the next part of it, but it's just not the season of life to start working on book 2. That said, by the time I am working with an agent and we are pitching to publishing houses, I want to at least have started book 2 and have an outline for the rest of the series, because it is very difficult as a debut author to pitch a book as a series to a publishing house. I recognize that's going to be an uphill battle, but I also think that the right people are going to find this book and it's all going to work out fine, and that God has miracles in store for me that I don't even know how to plan for. So that's the mentality we are working with. But anyways, thank you so much for being here. I am incredibly grateful to every single one of you who watched this until the very end and took time out of your life to observe my perseverance and just witness me following my dreams. It is a lot of time to be putting into something that I don't really know where it's gonna go, but I believe in it more than anything, and I'm just really, really excited for where the future is going. So again, thank you so much for your support. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it with some other writer and artist friends so they can watch this too, and subscribe to the channel so that YouTube knows to push this to more people like you. And I promise that I'm gonna keep making videos as best as I can of this whole process. I'm so thrilled to be getting into agenting, to be getting into submitting to publishing houses very soon, but that is a story for another time. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful time working on whatever it is that you are working on, and please tell me what that is in the comments below so we can support each other. And I will see you next time. Bye!